So that's a little challenging for me to talk about because it's very close to home. But I was thinking about, are there jerks that exist in academia? And um, why is it challenging? It's kind of like, opening up the kimono, basically, as the saying goes. It's a little real. But, the truth is yes, that there are a lot of jerks that exist in academia. But here's the thing is that I don't think that academics are any different than regular people. I want you to go back to middle school and high school. There was jerks that were there as well, right? Those people existed maybe in power positions. As it sort of filters up, you start getting more people doing those kind of behaviors, but it's not going to be overt. It's not going to be on the surface where that stuff is very obvious because that they've moved up in a career. That stuff is generally not acceptable, whatever those particular behaviors are that you are thinking about in terms of defining somebody as a jerk. But often it's a lot more covert, in the sense that it's kind of hidden. They're just more politically savvy. Um, if you start looking at, so we researchers and organizational behavior and management, we study all sorts of things. That's actually a really hot topic, is study sort of dysfunction. And I mean, guess where people get the inspiration for that stuff, right? Um, they're not getting it from their years of experience of working in companies traditionally because they just don't have that experience. So they're getting it from their own individual experiences. They're getting all of this insight about human behavior, the sort of jerkiness human behavior that exists from within. Um, but what can we do about this? Right. So that's the more important thing is, first of all, acknowledge that it exists, right? Like there are people that are not in your best interest, but more than likely, here is what I don't think everybody is nice, right? Like, despite the fact that you might listen to a lot of the stuff I talk about, I really don't. Uh, but more often than not, it's because of people not being like, it's because of personality types. Everybody's got a personality, and some people just don't know how to communicate very well. Um, that's like there's all these different factors, right? On top of, some people just not being nice human beings, right? Like, but there's a lot of other things that go on behind the scenes. So what can you do about it is try not to propagate it, right? That's the key thing with a lot of this behavior, right? Like with bullying is, or any number of behaviors like that, it's trying not to propagate it. And I know it's challenging. I understand. I know that it often feels like you're tattling, right? But just try not to propagate it as much as you can, right? Like thinking about, okay, if we want to create a group of well-rounded people, just in general, how do we encourage that support? This is where I am extraordinarily optimistic about the newest generation that's coming in, um, because they're a lot more sensitive. They were actually trained for sensitivity. They were trained, everybody complains about Gen Z and all this kind of stuff. But in my experience, the ones that are quite a bit younger than I am, half my age, are freaking remarkable. They're really in tune with a lot of stuff. They're a heck of a lot more less willing to propagate negative behavior. They're often, really just very, very self aware. And there is this group of young leaders that are truly inspiring. Like when I see them, I'm always just enthusiastic about the world. Yes, there's a whole bunch of doofuses, just like in every generation. I probably shouldn't use that language, but just kind of like being silly with who they are for the time being. But that happens in all generations. And I want you to sort of take lessons from them in terms of their training that they've had. They've had to grow up in a world that's, particularly in America, it's not true of all countries, but in a world that's seemingly decreasing. In a lot of trends, you pick the trend, man, it's happening in the wrong direction in America. Um, but globally, a lot of things, there's lots more instability, all those kind of things. So they're living within a a culture that is not as optimistic as many of the older people were part of. Um, but I want you to be well aware that if you want to stop any behavior that is not kosher, I want you to use there's this model called the Swiss cheese model, and it's actually from healthcare, and it's actually talking about safety protocol. Um, and each layer of the cheese has holes into it, so it's going to stop. But there's multiple layers of cheese and Swiss cheese, and if you try to stick a pen through all of the holes, you won't be able to do it. Right? So there's all these different layers, and I want you to sort of view yourself as the first layer, right, of creating a an area where you feel comfortable, and a lot of people feel comfortable to do good things. I want you to practice that. What might that look like for you? Well, that's, it might not necessarily be reporting, but it might be working on encouraging other people, right? It might be changing the conversation about what it means to be a good academic. Um, it's not sort of cutthroat, but supportive, right? Like it's all about these kind of things that we talk about and putting them in as much practice as possible so everybody feels encouragement at any given time. And I want you to look at how you can do that, where you can be the layer in the Swiss cheese that's going to stop. Now, if we do this collectively, it really works, right? And that's why the younger generations, I want to come back to that, is they've learned how to do this collectively. And many of them have grown up with very supportive communities, supportive groups that allow them to thrive. And the people that are part of these supportive groups and communities are doing spectacularly well. And I want you to remember that this behavior can be solved. It's not it's not a fixed feature, right? And we can solve these things. You just collectively we have to do it one by one. That's it. One by one, collectively make sure that people feel a lot more warm and fuzzy. And that's an important part. All right, take care and have a wonderful day.